Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And I have somebody that ain't been here for a minute, but pure creative. You know what we about? Creativity, culture, and community. And definitely somebody adding a whole lot of creativity, a bunch of culture to the point where like she drove up with a doom doom in her back seat. And for showing the community, she was already interacting with the cats around my house. If you ever been over here to Detroit is Different, it is a colony of real cats. It's almost like out of like one of them old school Disney movies or something. It ain't Heathcliff or Garfield or nothing. These are like some, well, I guess Heathcliff may have been kind of like that, but here nor there. Somebody that is pouring into the diaspora love. Because for real, tapping into it. I'm talking about the African dance, drum, the whole experience, and how you need to learn about how these dances are intertwined in our life day to day. Ajara, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me. And like you said, it's been a long time. Oh my
I
God.
know, I know. You got stared down by I think White and Brown.
I sure did. I sure did. White and Brown was waiting for me to open my car door.
Exactly. See, he's tapping back to the diaspora too.
Like, let me get
I
some. Let
know,
me get some.
way back into his lion days. Leopard days, or who knows what they could have been a hyena or
Bobcat.
something. Yeah,
Bobcat.
Bobcat days. There we go. That's where they come from. You know, it's like the black squirrels have left and cats have taken over Detroit.
I will agree. They're out here.
Exactly. They everywhere now, picking up for where them black squirrels left off.
I
But
can't.
amongst the scenery of the Detroit urban experience, you adding something that's real cool. You've been doing this for a couple of years, and you're tying in like just a love of dance, and dance is so appreciated on so many levels connecting to our culture. But you're presenting this like more layers to the African dance than what would just be, I guess, like the connection of being in the culture. You also give like more of a context to this. Talk a little bit about what you're doing and how and why.
Yeah. This is our fourth annual convening for dance and culture. We started in 2020, actually, during the pandemic. It was
Mhm.
supposed to be in person, but ended up being online.
Virtual dancing.
I'm telling you, that was difficult, and
Yeah.
nobody wanted that.
Mm.
So, fast forward to 2020, we brought it back in person again. We did it last year, and now we're in 2024, and it has grown quite a bit. We have a lot of support throughout the Midwest, Chicago, Cleveland, Columbus. So this has really been like a meeting point for a lot of like cultural enthusiasts around the Midwest that just say, "Hey, let's come to Detroit." And going back probably before we were even born, Detroit and Chicago had a really strong relationship around dance and culture. That I-94 corridor
Mm.
saw a lot of us going back and forth on the highway to experience dance and culture. And so, like, I'm really trying to bring that back because Detroit is a cultural hub, right? Like, you shouldn't have to go to New York or LA, to see a good dance production. You can see it right here in Detroit. And so that's what we're trying to do. So that's what the convening of dance and culture is. It's performance, it's teaching, it's storytelling, it's drum workshops, it's networking. Anybody that wants to be connected to, learn more about how we as Black people are connected through the African diaspora.
All right. So when is it? Where is it? And how do I get connected?
Yeah, so it is this weekend, October 19th to 20th. All dance and drum classes will be held at Say Detroit Play Center. That is on Van Dyke between 7 Mile and State Fair. Yes, we're
Mm.
going to the east side.
I
The east
love it.
side don't be getting no love.
Hmm.
So we are over there. On October 19th, which is Saturday, we have our concert, which is going to be featuring Afriky Lolo from St. Louis and House of Jit based here in Detroit. I cannot
Ah.
wait. And that will be at Detroit School of Arts.
Okay.
Doors are at 7, and the show starts promptly at 8 p.m.
Okay, you put promptly in there. You know our people, part of the culture.
I'm bad too. I'm sorry.
You
Like,
know what I'm saying? They be like, you said 8 o'clock. I will get there at 9:30.
okay, show will be over. Show will be over.
Okay, so with this and tying to the diaspora and so many different dancers, you've connected to it your whole life. So now we can drive down that classic Detroit is different street. Your journey in dance, but first journey to Detroit. What brought? How many generations deep you to this city?
To be honest, my my mother was born here.
Okay.
Her father was born in Eufaula, Alabama, and my
Wait,
grandma.
time out. All right. You know I'm about to ask, where is Eufaula, Alabama?
Eufaula, Alabama is outside of Birmingham.
Okay.
So to be honest, there's a lot of people that have their roots in Eufaula. I did not know that.
Okay, I know a lot of Alabama in Detroit. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know specifically Eufaula. I'm probably gonna get some emails and some DMs like, yep, them people from Eufaula. It's like, you
Yep,
ever have some
Eufaula,
Eufaula
Alabama.
turnips? Something
Yep,
like that.
yep,
Uh-huh.
yep. So yeah, so I don't know too much about Eufaula. Just growing up, going to family reunions,
Mhm.
right? So, but the Great Migration, right? Coming up here for jobs. My grandfather and his mother came up here, met
Mm.
my grandmother. Her family is also from Mississippi and Alabama,
Hmm.
and they got together in Royal Oak Township. I don't know if people are familiar with the Royal Oak Township.
Right, we've talked a little bit about it, but black folks hear Royal Oak and be thinking, "Oh, I ain't supposed to be there." But Royal Oak Township
Mhm.
is like the Highland Park of the suburb. I'm just
I mean, let's say that. Let's
black
say
folks
that.
over there.
It's black folks. There's a lot of black folks. So
Mhm.
it's just a black enclave where everyone knows everyone.
Mhm.
And so my father, who immigrated here from Sierra Leone, West Africa,
Mm.
rented a room from my great grandparents in their house.
Mm.
And that is how he met my mother.
Ain't that something?
Yep, he got a scholarship to go to Lawrence Tech,
Hmm.
and he came here and met my mom, and the rest is history. So that is my journey, but also, my connection to culture. Growing up, my dad owned a nightclub, Sierra Afriky, which was on the west side, Plymouth, in between Southfield and Evergreen.
Okay, we very familiar. That's like a strip of it's like a strip of Africa over there for a minute. You know
It
what I'm
sure
saying?
was. It sure was.
Like between the hair braiding, the food, the clothes, the feel. But even before we jump into your dad, I want to get a little bit more about this Alabama side,
Yeah.
your mom's side. When your granddad got here, where did he end up working through the migration?
GM. So my
Okay.
granddad retired from GM. My great grandfather worked at the foundry that is now Rouge, like that Rouge Steel. So like right when like Ford Rouge was
Yeah.
starting, that's where my great
Wow,
grandfather
so your
worked.
great grandfather was there for a lot of the I don't know, we know of when we say rebellion in Detroit, we immediately think of the rebellion in 67, not necessarily 43, but in a lot of the automotive plants,
Mhm.
especially Rouge, it was a lot of tension, first off, between corporate and worker. And black workers, shout out to it's so funny because these are coupled. The Carolyn Baker interview is right there too with General Baker's work. Your great grandfather was there for a lot of, I'm assuming a lot when you think of Rouge Steel, and a lot of black folks consistently, and some of the, I guess you say, the poor class of Europeans had those foundry jobs because it was that tougher, hard labor. A lot of, let's put it like this: the foundry is why OSHA laws exist.
Say that
You know what I'm
it was hard work back
Mhm.
then. It was very hard work, and so that is how my great grandfather came up here, and so that is my grandmother's side, and then so again, my grandfather's side is from Eufaula.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that what side of town did where they settled at? Where did they live? Everybody stayed in Real Oak Township.
Royal Oak Township. Yeah, when they came up here from down south,
Mm-hmm.
Royal Oak Township, my great grandparents actually built their house from the ground up on it was on Woodside, and then they moved to Rimersville. I could probably be getting
Some of the details.
the details wrong, but my childhood, my great grandparents lived on Rimersville.
Okay.
Before I was born, they were on Woodside. They probably had
And the
another.
home they built.
Yep, they
Damn.
probably had another house before that, but they had quite a few properties in Royal Oak Township. They were one of the first families that really like founded it, and I think that was because it Royal Oak Township really, I think, was like 1920s maybe, and I don't know the details as to why Royal Oak Township was founded, but yeah, my family was one of the like the members.
Original family.
Yes.
So when the documentary said about Royal Oak Township, you gonna be in there.
Yep.
Holding the picture of your people's like.
Yep. The Pattons. Yes. Yes. That's their last name.
Okay. So your people, that's where you at. Where did you all, and I'm guessing you grew up there in Royal Oak Township too, correct?
I did not.
Okay. All right. All right. So your dad gets this space, and I'm always interested in like how meetings happen. So he gets the space, and then he's like, "Yo, I'm in school." Then he see your mom, and your mom fly, and he like, "Let me cook something for you. Let me get some culture for you." And your mom was like, "All right."
That's kind of how it happened. So my dad came here. He was in school and was doing odd jobs. He was a butcher, he was a janitor, but then he got an opportunity when Ford Wixom opened up. So I'm deeply ingrained in the
union culture.
Yes, definitely in the union culture. And I remember going up I-96 with my dad, going to union meetings. And so back in the I think he got that job with Ford in like 1977. My dad came here in 75. So I think 77 he got the job at Ford, and that is when him and my mom kicked off. Because I'm sure she didn't want no broke African college student. I mean, let's just be honest. So my dad started getting paper.
Okay.
And he was like, "Hey, I'm here. What's up?"
Now I'm renting 2 rooms. I got 2 rooms. It's like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so much of like when we think of African culture inside of America and just Africans in America, I think immediately a lot of people think people from Nigeria, people from Ghana, people from Ethiopia, Eritrea, possibly South Africa, but here, Sierra Leone, not as much. And whole different culture to itself. Sierra Leone is people, and you can share more about it, but definitely one of the... First off, it's so weird that we call this stuff Sierra Leone, because in reality, the colonized nation that took over where these different tribes were already living, who knows, depending upon what that was there in really the tribes and everything. So as I speak to these nations, as I interview Godwin from Young Village before, and he's Igbo from Nigeria, it's so... Like even the culture there, it's like we're calling it Nigeria, but those are lines that were placed through colonization.
I appreciate that, because that is
not
truth.
And not to sound too much like the Black Panther movie, but it's just real, meaning that the way that the resources were abundant in Africa, different European nations would fight over what they would want to take. Sierra Leone that nation that was taken, and Lord knows how my Aisha Shule history is coming together. Let's see. And I know Baba Confense and Gregory Hicks are probably looking at this like this brother is wrong, but I believe that's more like a lot of Dutch settlers to sell off in what would become the Mayafa or the Middle Passage. So it's a little bit different of what was happening because of the colonization and the enslavement of African peoples itself too. But with all that context, can you piece some of that together and
I
tell me what the
definitely
culture
I
feels
definitely
like?
can. So Sierra Leone, people think it's French, but it's actually a Portuguese name. It's
Mm-hmm.
Sierra Leona. It means mountain lion
Mm-hmm.
in Portuguese. So when the Portuguese came up on the harbor, the wind that was blowing across the mountains, they said roared like a lion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how Sierra Leone came to the name came to be. And so fast forward when the scramble of Africa happened, Britain claimed Sierra Leone as a royal British colony. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is how Sierra Leone became to be. It became a settlement for freed slaves from Britain, Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
Country next door, Liberia, became the settlement for freed slaves in America. Right.
Mm.
So Liberia at one point in time was a part of Sierra Leone, but it was gifted by a chief to the society that was establishing Liberia. So that's how Sierra Leone and Liberia became to be. And so my background actually my family in Sierra Leone are originally from Nigeria. So
Mm.
we are technically called Creoles.
Mm-hmm.
So we are part of like the Creole group that of the freed slaves and the expatriates, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
or the freed individuals of different parts. So you can find this population in Nigeria, in Gambia. Those countries have like like a population of individuals that were quote unquote like freed from enslavement. So that is our story. So my father was born in Sierra Leone. His mother was born in Sierra Leone, but my great grandparents were originally from Southwest Nigeria.
Mm. Okay, and I like that you gave that context and help piece together a lot of where, it's only so much information, that I can carry. And that with this though, I know that because where it sits and where it was at just there in West Africa, um, coast, coastal West Africa, the culture is also blended. It's kind of like for here, if you ever been to New Orleans, you know what I'm saying, like a little bit of that New Orleans feel. So people will say like you met an African and da da da, but Sierra Leone's different. Detroit is different. Can you talk a little bit about the culture and some of how it comes together and feels?
Yep. So I'm glad you are like bringing this up. I'm like, wow. So yes, Sierra Leone is definitely a melting pot for Africa because it was a hub for um freed slaves from British territories. You have Africans of like Congolese ancestry. We have an actual neighborhood in Freetown called Congo Town. You have, just different neighborhoods in Freetown because when they landed in Sierra Leone, it was Freetown that they landed in. So you have a lot of Africans from all across the continent that were placed there, and they made Freetown their home. So you have Congo Town, and you have Fuller Town, like Fuller
Hmm.
people, You have Whêbe, which is where my family is from. That is heavily Yoruba, Nigerian. And then you have the Creoles that were from Nova Scotia in Britain and Jamaica. You have like
Mhm.
individuals that were brought in from Jamaica. So Freetown and Sierra Leone in itself is a really big mixture of a
Mm.
lot of different cultures.
And that's what I figure. And also, as you speak of the Portuguese, so like in this hemisphere, basically away from Africa, which is another name that was placed by Africanus, another colonizing of it, but comes to another place placed by another colonizing of way more black people are in Brazil than any other place on earth other than Africa.
Yep.
Portuguese. And when you think of Brazil, you think of a lot of dance. So I'm guessing some of the connections probably go from there, the dance, the drum, into what we think of that Mayafa of those connections that
Yep.
exist.
Yep, definitely, definitely. Like some, like you can find like I don't want to say untainted. I'm trying to find the right word, but unchanged African spirituality and chants and songs in Brazil, and you could go to Benin and Nigeria, and those are the same songs that they are singing right now. Like one teacher that would be here for our conference, Danda de Ora, she's from Salvador, Bahia, and her dance is those like folklore traditions of Brazil that you could trace back to Benin and Nigeria, and then you could also find in Sierra Leone as well, because those are the people that left Nigeria and came to Sierra Leone. They
Mm.
brought those traditions with them.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And I'm just piecing it. I'm piecing together stuff like when I always say the goal of Detroit is different is to strengthen critical thinking skills. So I'm always putting 2 + 2 + 2 of all of this stuff. So I think Portuguese because that's always where it's like I got homies that go to Brazil a lot, and it's like I'm broken Spanish. I don't know how my broken Portuguese would be. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I think. But I also am so aware of the African culture just so heavy in Brazil. And you just broke down that it's going to be a class this weekend that you can see the dance direct. So you say the words and the verbiage, and this goes back to something that I'm starting to think and really realize a whole lot more. The Ivan Van Sertima. They came before Columbus. I think so many people were already here in another colonized place that we know of, the other day being Indigenous Peoples Day, but America itself. And God knows, Michigan and Detroit. These are just lines drawn up for colonization and territory under Western ideas. But a lot of people, I think, were already here. Hence, this is how I know, and not the historical method or anything. Almost every one of those quote unquote exploration ships that was a colonization ship, it was brothers on them. So it's like, why you need a brother? Unless they kind of already knew how to get here and they knew how to be like, hey, what up? Hey, look, you gotta watch this white man, but they can give you some sugar. A gold or whatever the negotiation of it is. And I know that's a very modern Carrie Fraser perspective of how that went, but many of all of those ships had black people on it.
Sure did.
Black men and black women. A lot of men are you can follow, but a lot of black women too, hence the Ivan Van Sertima. So, you wouldn't I know I wouldn't pick a navigator that didn't know where we navigate.
Right. Be in Iceland somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, you missing hey, don't rely on me navigating anything but these blocks. So now to like more of your father's story in that and coming here. Lawrence Tech, then into the Detroit culture. What was his take like in his family too? Because also I think a lot of Africans that make that come to America and family, what was his take of America and the opportunities here? And just making an adjustment to Detroit itself.
Um, I think he fared pretty well.
Mhm.
So, a story that he always tells is that he came here. It was in November, probably around Thanksgiving
Oh, he
time.
was freezing.
Yep, he was freezing and he didn't have a coat.
Mm.
He did not bring a coat. And I don't know how, like at first he rented a room or stayed with a friend
Mhm.
that was in Highland Park.
Okay.
And so he
So he
got
went to the HP of the HP at
he
first.
sure
He
did.
ended up in the
He sure
HP
did.
of
Yep.
Oakland County.
Yep. Someone has said, "Oh, like most of the time in immigrants, like you go to where you
Know
know
somebody.
someone, right?" And so he had a friend that was no, it wasn't his. Yeah, it was a friend that was already here, and so he linked up with his friend in Highland Park. And then my dad started working, and his story is my great grandparents bought him his first like winter coat.
Wow.
And so like I think they just really like took to my dad.
Your dad must have been a stand-up gentleman.
My dad is super cool.
Okay.
A real nice guy. Like
So he
just
already had the end on your mom's family. See, there you go. It was
a
like coming to
real
America for real. It's like you get your
yep,
father.
a real nice guy. Really really like soft spoken, gets angry when it's time to get angry, but rarely raises his voice.
Cool.
Yep, just like a real cool person.
Mhm.
And so that is how like he like I guess like established like his outlook of Detroit is that,
Mm.
this family like adopted
Mm.
him and, showed him like the ropes and this and that and, like just showed him, like the wherewithals of Detroit. And so like he was cool with my great grandparents before he even met my mom. That's the thing. So, and so like my sisters, so I have two older sisters that we don't have the same dad, but we just grew up like
Together.
yeah, we didn't know we didn't have the same dad until
Mhm.
later. I was like, "What?"
Mhm.
So, my sisters would be like, "Oh, like they'll go and play, and but then they will go to my dad's apartment, which was upstairs, and he will serve them tea and cookies."
Wow.
And then my mom used to be like, "Where are y'all going?" And they would say, "The guy upstairs." And my mom never knew that there was a man upstairs in
Wow.
the room.
Mhm.
So my sisters always say that my mom stole their friend from them
Hilarious.
because like he was friends with, everybody knew my dad except my mom.
Mm.
So that's the story. But I will say that um of course like Detroit has always been very welcoming to Black people, period.
And I also would think that your great grandparents probably saw similar to the Great Migration. Hence, a lot of folks from different places come. So it's like if you was black folks from Mississippi, it's like, yeah, come on over here. And they, at that time in the 70s, saw in your father someone, a black person that could, need that support. Especially it's
Yep.
like, what you doing up here without no coat? Because I mean,
Yep.
you can imagine all the people that came from down south that didn't have a coat either. Even
Mhm.
to like real life situation with me. When we used to do a open mic that Kool-Aid, rest in peace, Kool-Aid hosted at Coco's House of Comedy, and this was like after Katrina, and I remember it was a dude that came to the open mic from New Orleans with like I guess like when people had the vouchers. I don't know if people kind of remember that at the time, and it may have been like around the same time, like maybe first second week in November or something, and it was like a light snow. And then he was like, "Yo, what the hell is falling from the sky? What's falling from the sky?" And I was like, "Yeah, we hear him outside." I'm like, "Yo, my man tripping." I'm like, "Damn, it must have been traumatic experience that this brother went through." We went outside, like, "Man, that ain't nothing but snow." He's like, "I ain't never seen this," and I was like, "This is cool because if you stay here long enough, you gonna know the snow where we gonna be talking like you." But just
Mhm.
that, you know what I'm saying? That connection, because I'm sure they saw in his experience some of what they were already used to. And they
Yep.
also know how cold it's so cold in the D it can be if and then just sharing in that community. And he took to that community and stored it to the point where he was even silent enough where your mom ain't even know he was in the crib. So
Yep. Yep. I think they saw in him something like that they came up
Yeah,
looking
that's what
for
I'm
too.
thinking. Yeah,
You know what I mean? And then that just like
connected.
connects to the nature of individuals,
Mhm.
nature of humans. You know, like even before my dad came, he played soccer for the national team. They called him to the moon because
Mm,
when he kicked the ball, it would go so high they thought it would go to the
that's
moon. So
funny.
that's his nick. People still call him to the
That
moon. Even when I go to
hilarious.
Freetown, they still call him to the moon. Yep, he worked in the diamond mines.
Mm,
So like he, did his thing in Sierra Leone, but like this opportunity came about to study abroad, and
he hopped on it.
he hopped on it. Yep, yep, and
So
so
I'm guessing that also plays an impression on how he looks at education as always being a gateway. I assume
mhm.
you was in some books as a kid. So,
Oh my God. Like I was very studious and stoic
uh-huh.
as a young person. And then
Okay,
I was just like, enough of school.
I know.
But yes,
But
yes.
his perspective and relationship to it is different than many of us can interpret.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah,
it was like, yeah,
definitely.
education was the gateway. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So
Yeah. Yep.
getting these books,
Yep. Living example of that, right?
Hmm.
Like he said, oh, they, pay for his visa to come and
Hmm.
school. But then also, he could also relate to being able to see other opportunities as well. Like, be
Owning the rest of the club.
the club, and
Mhm.
then also like Ford came knocking and he
Yeah.
said, ooh. So my dad actually left school and started working for Ford.
Okay.
And started working for Ford. He he probably worked at Ford for like almost 30 years.
Mm.
So yeah, he became that real blue union Detroit bred
Right.
based like worker, right?
Mhm.
Who bled the Democratic Party,
I
who
can imagine.
lived for like the union, and and I was born into that. I was raised in that, and so like we became like the story of like black working middle class that existed nowhere else in the nation but in Detroit, right?
Yes.
So, yep.
And it's and I was having a talk about that where I'm glad you drove into that. Where my perspective of that is that snapshot in time, not just in Black America, but just America itself. Where I'm at now, this is Kari's perspective, was an externality, meaning an unplanned economic outcome of a lot of the ways that America was able to cherry pick the colonizing of so many of the other nations across the world after World War II. So the quality of life we experienced as Americans in the 60s and 70s, especially here in Detroit, because the thought process was if we go back to war, during this Cold War, Detroit made the arsenal for World War II, and really we were selling weapons to the axis of evil too. I mean, to be honest with you, but Detroit needs to be protected because that is who can create the weapons if we need to, if this Cold War concept escalates. But also just setting the stage from the League of Nations to United Nations being here and quote unquote assisting the other allies, but that assistance came with setting up a lot of the plate for America being in a lot of discussions about a lot of things, even that play out in the world stage right now, post World War II, that even pre World War One were always exploitive. I'm looking at a lot of the stuff that's happening in Burkina Faso. You spoke to the Congo, Niger. Um, even the way the brothers and sisters in Nigeria are like, hey, yo, this president better not be moving the way that we think they move. Like, so a lot that's happening in Africa, the Middle East, Asia, South America, we've benefited here in America from a lot of things that were already very exploitative practices of the West for centuries. So, the more I get the framework of it, but what was created from that is the American idealism. But I just always believe that the playing field was never as quote unquote fair as presented, hence why my love for media and understanding and unpacking and trying to put myself in different places, because a lot of the people even to this day that we're saying are migrant workers or immigrants, or I don't like the term, but like illegals or whatever, the reason why a lot of their nations are suppressed and they're seeking asylum is because a lot of the way that, I'm going to say, corporations from America, because I don't think we as Americans are voting on a lot of this stuff, have exploited these nations across the world.
Definitely. And I love these geopolitical conversations because America, in some ways, sold that middle class to
Yes.
the rest of the world. But at the same time, they were like exploiting it too. Like if you go to Liberia and, Goodyear tire in the rubber trees, how, they were they tapped the rubber trees until they were just untappable.
Yeah.
And like depleted, that country of that resource, that is just the same as like, like putting in, I mean, we could talk about like Burkina Faso and Thomas Sankara, like how he was assassinated by his friend, but but France, the United States put him there for the friend to assassinate him. So like, yeah, like at the same time, like you're selling like America is really great on the TV and the radio across the world, but you're also putting like chess pieces, for like overall like world, I guess I don't want to say dominance, but yeah.
Exploitation. And
Right,
I
right,
mean,
right.
even, and shout out to Abayomi when we spoke about the Niger conflict. That may have been 2 years ago, maybe last year. And you look at the way that, even the media is like the rebels, but the people there revolted against the French dominance of especially like the uranium mines, to the point where like French uranium, 95% of it was coming from Niger. So you think of it's like, okay, no longer is Niger a colony of France on paper. So it looks like, hey, Niger has its freedom. But in reality, the ownership, all the minerals there, all of the business is still being conducted through French companies. So now you have a revolution that takes place. And then with that revolution, things that, not to make it, this is real geopolitical. I'm just going there. So then France is ousted from those positions. And the world stage would turn around and say, okay, well, if you sell that, because at that point, Niger was getting, I want to say 3% of the profits of uranium would go to the nation. And it was being talked about in economic markets of a lot of the allies to France. So that would have been like America, Great Britain, Germany, a lot of the NATO nations, to say, if you buy uranium from them, you're going to buy it at 3%. Because we're not about to have them overthrow one of our allies in NATO and basically sell it on the market for what it's worth. And that's where Russia and China stepped up and said, we will buy it for 100%, which has helped in certain ways sustain things. But it's things like that. It's Haiti has its quote unquote freedom from France, but the rest of the world has honored the overthrow of Napoleon from enslavement and colonization of that nation to tax that nation for now over a century. And that's why so much is happening when you really lay it down, like where it's like, okay, you get your freedom, but we're going to tax you for it. This is in America, Britain, Germany, Canada, so many nations have been complicit in saying, yep, we're going to tax you too. And this is what creates the whole concept of when people say, like, why do Haitians want to come here? It's like because a lot of their exploitation and making it more plain. Me and my dad were having this discussion. I shouldn't be able to buy a pineapple for about $4 any time of the year in America. In reality, sometimes that pineapple, especially being in Michigan, should possibly cost me about $30 if I was
That's
paying what
true.
a lot of people across the world were really paying.
Mm.
But the a lot of American corporations have vassals of what, back with those days would be called colonizing in other spaces. You touched on one in Liberia, but this is very commonplace, and a lot of that is changing, but it impacts the way we see what's happening even here and in France and in Great Britain and in Italy and in Germany as these relationships of what was, I guess, a veil of I don't know, I guess you would say dominance kind of falls to the wayside. And one of those externalities, I think, was this whole concept of the middle class. Because for you to be middle class, how much exploitation does it take, quote unquote, for you to have that white picket fence, 2 kids and a dog, and a gold watch after you work for 20 years, and you know what I'm saying, dental and eye optical the rest of your life? What expense does that come with to the world market? Which I'm questioning more and more when I think about it from a macro level, because it
Mhm.
has a lot of impacts across the world.
It sure does. I mean, and I think for me, that's why I identify first as a Black woman before I identify as an African.
Hmm.
Only because for me, that signifies like the political struggle that
Yeah.
we have globally, right?
Hmm.
And then also to say African, it's like, but we're only like on the tip of the iceberg in terms of what power we could really have once we really actualize it, right?
Mm.
And so like I'm very much like conscious of our like global struggle as Black people, as melanated people to really overturn, like past and present imperialism. I mean,
Mm.
because we are still there. We are still there. Like even if we think about, like things that are happening, like in Sudan, in terms of like that civil war that's
Yeah.
going on. Like people like it's like Western backed against like I don't wanna like, terrorist backed. I don't wanna say terror because there is not terrorists, but
But this is how
alignment.
yes.
Alignment,
Hmm.
and that country is at a civil war. Or like me being in Mali in January and I'm speaking my broken French or
Hmm.
whatever, and someone says to me, "You're in Mali. We speak Bamana. We don't speak French." And I said, "Oh, excuse me." But that in itself is like globally, Black people are fighting against imperialism every day.
Yeah, and it's layers to this too. Because
Very
like when
much.
the Queen of England died,
Mhm.
um, which her whole story for people to become the crown and the queen is such an interesting story within itself. But definitely something in one era Americans honor. But I know a lot of Black people were turning on TV like, why these Africans and people in the Caribbean crying over this? But you got to recognize the layers that are into their mind. But
Yep.
then that was one half, and then the other nations were like, yo, straight up, about 98% of them diamonds go back to us and rubies, which
Mhm.
is real.
Mhm.
So give us back that crown. So this is a reality. So it's like on one side of the street, somebody's crying because our queen died, and on another side of the street, it's like, yo, dead, alive, give us back that crown so we can get really what it's worth, and this come back to where it's rightfully owned.
Mhm. 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 Like, it's still a conversation on whether or not, museums are going to like give back the like
Artifacts.
artifacts. It's like,
Yeah.
like, what you mean give back? Like you
Yeah.
stole it, you know what I'm saying? So it's like even the choice of wording
Yes.
is like really wild. It's like
Yeah.
you stole it, like you're holding it for ransom, basically.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're not gonna loan back anything that you stole, or like you're not gonna allow us to
Mhm.
like have it in our museums. Like you stole it. People stole it. Like
Yeah.
stuff,
And when you say it like that, it hits different.
Mhm.
Bryce was talking about that in one of his presentations a minute ago. It's like it hits different when you say that. And when you also speak about just our culture, which I think that goes into our people, we're so creative. And your creativity tying into dance. What was the first love to tie into dance? And you being such a nerd like me too about a lot of other stuff, the culture in dance. I'm going to get into that question too. But what was it that dance just connected to you?
Ooh, I'm telling you, if you were asked my parents, um, they would invite people over to our house. My dad would play some like African music, some soukous music from the Congo, and I would bounce on my butt, and
Mm.
I would just bounce to the music.
And this is like
This
newborn.
I was I couldn't walk. I
Okay.
couldn't walk. I would just bounce on my bottom like to the beat of the music. And as I grew up, my dad was a DJ, and he was a DJ back in Freetown too. Like
Okay.
he loved the music. And then growing up in the nightclub, like I was always connected to music, like I always had like Congolese uncles and Jamaican aunties and grandparents from Royal Oak Township. So like I was very much like immersed in all of these things that like, made Black culture, what it is, right? The beautifulness of Black culture, and my outlet to showcase that, to show that, was dance. I didn't even start doing West African dance until like adulthood.
So when you heard like want to be starting something, you're not just thinking, "What's Michael Jackson saying?" You knew that was Fela.
Yeah, I mean, because I grew
You
up
grew
on
up
that.
in
I
that.
grew up
Yeah.
in that. I grew up in that. Like just, then my dad. I mean, his record collection alone would be like wall. It was like walls of records that he
Mm.
would have, and and we would play the records, and I'd be like, okay, who's this? Who's that? Like, what are they saying? As a child, my sister and I boycotted South Africa. We told our parents we didn't want Reebok shoes.
Wow.
Nobody could come to the house if they supported South Africa's apartheid government. We were 7 and 6 years old talking
Hmm.
that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like we just like,
You were aware
yeah,
of
very
things on
much.
another level.
Yep.
That's deep. In that dance, and I bring up Michael, and it's October Thriller and everything. It was Nelson George did a documentary on the anniversary of Thriller. I want to say last year, like the 40th anniversary, and it was so interesting, just the dance segment of that. So anybody that likes the album and interesting, and I love to almost watch it with you to break down more of it and my one, because the movements. And really, it's like, because I'm a person that's way more in song than dance, but just understanding dancers interpret what the dance is saying.
Mhm.
Because so much of the dance, just like our songs, are so much more intentional than it looks sweet. Even though it do look cool, but it's so much more going on. As you study more of this, what have you found in the interpretations of a lot of the West African dance tying to Brazil, and then even tying back to, as you say, the here in America?
Right.
What's the messaging going on with a lot of the Black dance?
Well, when you think about African dance, West African dance in particular, because that's where like my practice is in, dance was done for like societal reasons, right?
Break
You,
it down.
so you didn't just dance because I want to dance. Yes, dance was done for like, you know,
Recreation.
joyous, recreation, but it was done to like symbolize your role or in society, but also just regular things. So, in case in point, TéMaTé, the name of my organization, is a dance and a rhythm from the from the Whêbe people, from now what we call the Ivory Coast,
Mm.
and it's a dance that mimics the rice harvest.
Hmm.
It's a dance that they do in now Guinea called casa. Casa is translated to the granary. So it's a dance that actually mimics and shows how you harvest grain.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's things like that that I think people um are need to be more aware of. Is that, yeah, dance is done recreationally, but it was also to like just normal like ways of being, you know. Uh, it's a dance called Pitam that comes from the Sierra people of Senegal.
Mm.
And that was more so like, I mean, it's about societal things too, because like they mimic like washing on a calabash. So like rocking the calabash back and forth, like, mimicking like household chores. So it's that like thing that I think like art and what we call art has been ingrained in us for generations, for centuries. And, we use like our expression to go about our daily life, right? And then that is also like could be translated into how like now people, those same dances and those same chants are done like across the world, in Brazil, in like, Garifuna culture, on in like Colombia and like Venezuela. It's those our your cousin says like blood memory,
Mm.
because like you don't know where it comes from, you just know it.
Mm.
And like this concert this Saturday is about that. It is about, it's called Rooted in Rhythm, but it is like us connecting back to our roots. And so like the highlight of the show is, House of Jit style,
Mhm.
created in Detroit, but it has so much similarity to a dance from the Ivory Coast called Zauli, and how like you have to be light on your feet and like the intricate foot patterns, and how you communicate with your upper body and your lower body. And we all know like the similarities between Chicago footwork and Detroit jit, but how like the connection to those to like a foundational element of Zauli that is like half a world away, but in our blood memory, like, do you think that we created that because we remembered how to do Zauli?
Mhm.
We remembered those intricate foot patterns that people were creating centuries ago, that someone was like, "Oh, I'm doing Chicago footwork, or I'm doing JIT." They don't know where it came from. I mean, I always say nothing is like invented. Something in you like is tapping into that memory and helping you to create. And so I always think it's like our like ancestors that are like, tapping us on our shoulder to like remember something that like is like born within us. I know I just said a lot.
No, no, I loved everywhere you went, and definitely this weekend I can just get that feeling, and I love the way this interview kind of got into a lot of layers of it, because through that memory, as people know, a lot of the dance is interpreting messages, like the songs interprets messages, the drums obviously interpret message. So you're thinking it's just a person smacking skin, but it's I'm talking to.
Yep, yep. The djembe drum is actually, I would say, what the town crier or something, like
Mhm.
the announcement of news, like that. That was the djembe drum. So that's how you gathered everyone in the place to talk about the news. So whether if it was a dance that like, okay, let's say what is I would say a dance that is done sometimes mm, we could say Mane or Guinea Fare or Yoki. So Guinea Fare are dances that are done, they're women dances, right?
Mm,
So you'll do these dances whether for engagements, weddings, but they're women dances, right?
mhm,
And so like even for the announcement of that, being able to get started, to do those dances or like getting ready to do like whatever series of dances that like that talks about like, oh, we're going fishing or we're it's the start of like the rainy season or Ramadan, and then you do like certain dances for
mhm,
that, or then you do certain dances for the end of Ramadan. Like
mm,
everything had a purpose and a place, and it was the drums that like helped to get the word out, but also the relationship between the drums and the dance too. Like a lot of people, like it's the concept. Even when I dance, like I just did dance day at Detroit School of Arts, and I said, well, can I bring my drummers because they know my
mhm,
steps, they know what I'm going to do. They're going to accentuate what I'm doing because it's that communication that I'm having. Like they already know what they need to emphasize, what they're not going to emphasize, what they need to pay attention to as I teach the class. And that is that whole relationship. Like I can't teach or do a performance, have a class without the drummer and vice versa. So if you see a dancer with no drummer or a drummer with no dancer, that ain't how it's done.
mm,
Back in the village, like, and also like individual dances, solos. Not, I mean, everybody does a solo, but dance is a communal activity because of what the dances are for. Again, you do dances for your like everyday life, right? So with that, it's like, okay, well, you're going to the stream to wash clothes, or you're going to um like you going hunting or something, like a hunting dance. It's a hunting dance called sofa. So like you would do that in a communal way. So
mhm,
and I think that's really like across the world, right? I'm speaking like I don't know. I'm not very versed in European and quote unquote
dance. Yeah,
Western
yeah, yeah.
culture, but
Mhm,
I have like studied a lot of like dance in Africa, and I would say the global South,
mm,
and that is what dance is for. It's communal. It is done together, and it is like very much like ingrained in like your societal tradition.
mhm. Yeah, I'm feeling it. I'm looking forward to it. We got to close with classic Detroit is different questions, but I'm feeling it. And yeah, I don't know a lot of those dances either. It's like what is the achy breaky heart for?
What is wow.
But so um so here we go. Classic one. Very first car. Year, make, and model, year you got it.
Wow. A 97 Purple Ford Escort.
I was gonna say if you didn't get Ford, I know your dad would have been like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, my dad went to the dealership. We got it from Lolo Ford.
Oh man.
Yes, and my dad and I went there. I had that car for 12, 13 years. And
Oh.
the only reason I got rid of it is because someone rear-ended me.
Oh.
I was sick because, baby, I had like almost 200 or something thousand miles on that car.
Hmm. Okay.
Man,
Where's the first place you went when you got it?
probably to the River Rock. Remember the River?
Oh yes. Yes. I was talking about X-Men security the other day. Oh, we love to rock.
Yeah,
man,
yeah. We had some times in that.
Oh man, there we go. That's a first place to go when you get a car in Detroit. Like when people talk about what club you remember, my era was definitely River Rock or St. Andrew. It's hard
Yeah.
it's hard to judge. Hard to judge, but the Rock was amazing. The Rock was amazing.
It was.
So, all right. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. You get to play 2 songs. Woodward and Jefferson. What songs you playing?
I am playing Godzilla. Dun, dun, dun,
Yeah,
dun,
see,
dun.
you really was at the River Rock. It's like, wow. It's like,
I'm playing that, and I am playing. Oh man, Auntie Ajara is coming out, but Jeffrey Osborne. Stay with me tonight.
okay.
Baby, stay with me tonight.
Yeah, that's that 80s drum. That feels like all that. That feels like, to me, that's like Beverly Hills Cop music. That's what I always think. But
I love it.
That may have been on was that on the 48-hour soundtrack? It may have been on the 48-hour soundtrack.
I love that song. I mean anything that got that feel to it. So I
rhythm.
really love Jeffrey Osborne, Billy Ocean.
I was gonna say Billy Ocean is the other one that I think of in that pace and that rhythm. And then also, I saw them on concert. Who's that? Even though it's a whole new band, but for the most part. But shout out Flint Town. What you call it? How did I Ready for the World?
Oh.
And actually, Lauren Hood, our mutual friend, Lauren Hood, I was like, yo, I think I got an extra ticket. You want to go see? She was like, I should see Ready for the World. Then we was just having that discussion. It was at Shane Park, obviously. And I'm like, he wasn't in Ready for the World originally. These old school bands got new members, but I'm with it. Hey, if you can ride that wave, ride that wave. The Rolling Stones is like 1,000 and still performing. So, but it's going to get to a point where like 40 years from now, the Temptations going to be performing and it's going to be like the 40th iteration of like, but hey.
Singing them
I think
songs,
it's the experience. Yeah, it's the experience of being there. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, it's going to be, I'm going to be 20 years from now, it's going to be a Drew Hill concert where it's like, where's Cisco? It's going to be Cisco's nephew.
I'm telling, we ain't going to remember none of that. Like, I don't know this person.
Hey, it's going to be an audience for it because it's the experience. So last one. You could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
Martha Jean, the Queen Boulevard.
I love it. I think she got like 3 votes, but she's actually my when I think of this and this and the arc of it and everything that Martha Jean has done in Black voice and culture and from getting voice out there. I mean, a lot of the premise in me, and then when I bring Ken Coleman, he gonna break down all of that stuff working with her, but Martha Jean is for sure. But why you pick Martha Jean?
I mean, because listen, I couldn't get in the car without hearing
that gospel.
It was just the radio station. I mean, Detroit in the 80s was just a different place. You know what I'm saying? Like it was for real Black. Not to say they ain't Black now, but man, to have that level of Black in leadership and in power, to hear it on the radio. People had their own radio programs and stations. And I just remember, like, if you wanted to get the word out on something, you had to be on that radio show.
Yeah. It was that was a different type of radio. That was not corporate radio.
It was not. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It was not, baby.
That was not a playlist curated by McDonald's.
They was talking real business.
She was talking about when men got their raises and stuff. Martha Jean.
Martha Jean, the queen.
Like, he got his raise down there at Chrysler now.
My friend says that when she don't feel like voting for someone, she'll write in Martha Jean, the queen's name.
That's something. Ain't that something? I'm sure she's had many a write-ins because Martha Jean, businesswoman, show enough Detroit. I mean, man, oh man, you know, powerhouse, and still reverberating to this day.
Yep.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you too.
Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today